Hello KeySet users. The feedback principle I'm going to speak to you today is in regards to providing students opportunities to reflect on feedback and talk to peers about their feedback. As teachers, we might assume that the bulk of feedback that students receive in a classroom on learning is provided by us, the teacher, the expert in the room, but we'd be incorrect. Research by Graham Nuttall suggests that up to 80% of all feedback received by a learner is actually provided by their peers and not the teacher. An interesting footnote to that piece of data is that 80% of that feedback provided by peers is actually incorrect. That doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, it's just not what we would provide to the learner if we were asked the question. So, what does this mean for us using KeySet? Well, it means that in order to develop student capacity to respond to feedback, we need to develop student capacity to deliver feedback. We need to develop students' capacity to have conversations with each other around what learning looks like. Researchers suggest that in order to optimize learning, a student actually needs 3 points of feedback before that assessment. Now, as teachers, 25 students in a room times 3, 75 points of feedback, that's impossible. But if we can get students to reflect as 1 point of feedback, provide feedback to a peer, and then receive feedback to themselves, that's a 2nd point of feedback, and then the teacher comes in with that high level of expertise. And that's why we need to develop student capacity to deliver feedback effectively and make sure that that feedback is on point and more aligned with what we would provide to the learner. So, considering this, in using KeySet, you may consider giving students access to those keyboards. If we're going to provide them feedback using the keyboard and we can control the level of information that is on that keyboard, giving students access to that same feedback makes sure that their feedback is much more aligned with ours. Rather than saying neat handwriting, the student will say something that is much more directed to the learning goal. The other thing we want to do is allow students to provide feedback to peers. So how can we use KeySet not only as a mechanism for us to provide feedback to a learner, but a mechanism for students to provide feedback to one another. The other thing that we want to do is after an assessment period or after a feedback experience in which students will receive feedback from us as teachers, put protocols and structures in place that can guide learner conversation around that feedback. So they can sit in a group and unpack and deconstruct the feedback they have each received and talk about what they might do differently. This way, learners learn from each other and develop the capacity to make sense and effectively action the feedback that we provide to them. As always, there are a bunch of resources that the KeySet team have provided to you to enhance this further, so make sure you check them out.